222. In Chicago in the house, make some noise. Dave Jeff, DJ, RTC. Y'all ready?
Y'all give it for Just Blaze, man.
God's favorite DJ, DJ Clark Kent.
The Alchemist, y'all. The Alchemist.
Give it up for DJ Premier.
If you want this shit, treat this shit like a job.
It was a quest just to, find music in general.
If I did our true hip-hop stories, believe me, there's a bunch of them,
There's some guys who are legends.
Welcome to the Legend Conversation Hot Seat, man.
The myth, the man, the legend.
Peace.
Super producer. Super everything, bro. How you doing today?
Tired, but I'm good, man.
Hey, so thank you for coming out.
Nah, come on.
You could have been anywhere in the world.
But I'm here with y'all.
But you're here with us. Yes, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Pop, so you're in Chicago. You've been here a lot of times. We've rocked. The fly block parties, even before then in that whole space. Like, what are some of your best memories of Chicago?
Man, I have to say probably that party. That
block party?
It was amazing. And that was before it even really grew to what it ended up becoming.
Right.
That definitely playing the celebration party for Tim.
For Tim, yeah. Give it up for Timbuktu, y'all. Timbuktu. Yep.
Yeah, that was a great night. There was another time. I don't want to call it a hole in the wall, but it wasn't fly like this. But it was some little club. I think
it was down here. I know what you're talking about.
Lava Lounge? Or
it was something small. It was hip hop.
Funky Buddha?
Yeah.
No, it might have been the Buddha.
I think me and Tim played that.
It might have been the Buddha.
Mistaken, yeah.
Empire? It was what?
Beauty bar.
That's what it was.
Yeah. Is Beauty Bar? Yeah, we kind of holish in the wallish.
That's where we did all the digital freshness.
Right.
In the day.
Now, Pop, us being in Chicago, right? And a lot of people say like the home of Michael Jordan, the Bulls, everything. And since we are sneaker people or whatever, like it's rumored like the Jordans kind of kicked your whole thing off for sneakers, right?
Yeah, I would say it was probably the Jordan 3.
Okay.
Before that, it was the right around the same time, the Adidas City something. I forget what they was called, but they were called City somethings, but they had like a city skyline along the side.
On the Adidas.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was those two right around the same time.
Okay.
But definitely, the Jordan 3 is really what kicked it into gear. I never had a pair. One of my best friends did. It was 3 of us, so we used to take turns wearing them on the weekends.
Wow.
Like, we go to the mall one weekend, and he would wear them, then the next week I would wear them.
Hey, that's some love.
Yeah,
that's some love.
Would there be, like, rules about what you could or couldn't do in the shoes?
No,
like
we didn't think about it that far.
Okay.
We just, like, yo, I can wear them this weekend? All right, cool. Here, go ahead. Tracy.
You cleaned them up? Did you have a whole thing, a whole ritual to cleaning them?
No, just basic, water and rag, whatever. Basic. Yeah, I mean, we were like 11 years old. We're not thinking about it that far.
Okay. Are you still collecting now?
Yes, not as often, just because priorities have changed and there's just so much going on in life in general. But I still cop a few major things a year. It's just not like I used to. It used to be like a literal weekly thing. But in that era, also being who I was being around, you kind of had to maintain that level. Level of fresh.
Had to. What was the last thing you copped?
Ooh, the last sneakers I copped, it was all around the same time, but it might have been these, if I'm not mistaken.
Because I know you probably just get boxes to the crib often.
Cops is a weird word.
Yeah, that's the thing. Right. Is it's like
went in the store.
Yeah, like these I actually bought in the store.
Okay.
Went and copped them. I think it was these and the Ben & Jerry's because I had never got them when they came out.
Okay.
So those two. The last pair I received, the Clot Cortezes. You seen those?
The Clot Cortez.
Yeah. They like kung fu slippers.
Yeah.
With the slip out. Yeah, those is hard. I had to get those.
Had to. Just some different shit.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as I seen them, I hit Eddie right away. Like, yo,
let me get that.
Yeah, I need that.
Okay.
In preparation for this, and I've heard you say that there's pictures of you, jokingly DJing your first birthday party.
100%. Yeah.
I'm guessing like a lot of train wrecks.
Well, I mean, it was only one turntable at a time, so it wasn't like I was cutting, but I was definitely the one playing the records. It was a lot of Village People, Macho Man.
Okay.
Over and over.
Over and over again.
That and Taste the Honey, Boogie Oogie Oogie.
We had Clark Kent here, and he
Right.
talked about his motivation. He would, he knew his grandmother or mom had a favorite song, and that like
Right.
he could make her feel good.
Right.
Jazzy Jeff said what drew him to DJing was looking out his window, seeing block parties, and the control that the
Right.
DJ had on the crowd. Just curious, do you remember like what first sparked you of like not just listening to music but having some kind of interactivity with the music?
I mean, I was always around it from the time I was very young, right? I had an older cousin who's like 6 or 7 years older than me. So when I'm like 5 or 6, he's like 11 or 12, right? So, and he had a record shop literally right around the corner from his store. So every week he's buying whatever new singles is out. But then also, he wasn't a collector, right? So when the album would come out, he would give me the singles. So that's how a lot of my first record collection was built. And around the same time, his older sister, she didn't have a DJ setup. Remember, like in the 80s, they had those rack systems where it would be like the turntable, the amplifier.
So everything in it in the little glass thing.
Right. So she had her set up with 2 turntables in the rack. And I remember specifically, this was when Thriller was out.
So like receiver, tape, or turntable.
Yeah, it was like 2 turntables on top of each other in the rack.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she had it rigged up somehow where she could play both at the same time. So he had a copy of Thriller. She had a copy of Thriller. So he's like, yo, watch this. And he put on Beat It, but he started one right after the other. So the drums was going boom, boom, cat, cat, boom, boom. And I'm just sitting there like, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was that. And then right around the same time, Crash Crew had On the Radio out, and Fantasy 3 had Ciroc out, which they were both had the same music. So I remember him showing me that, like he would play one and play the other one right after. So it was a lot of those experiences. And then around the same time was when we first started to get Red Alert on 98.7 at night, and
So you could hear it.
on 98, and then you had Marley and Mr. Magic doing the Rap Attack on 107.5 at the same time. At the same time that this is happening, you had Friday night videos in New York Hot Tracks that both came on at midnight. So we would listen and we would tape both radio shows, like he had 2 boom boxes, so we would alternate between those 2. And I'm listening to these DJs. And then at the same time, right when the mix show was over at midnight is when the video shows came on.
Okay.
So spending the night at his house on weekends was very much like the crash course
Of DJ.
into just DJing and musicianship, period.
Crazy. And not to cut you in, that same experience, like Jeff does this thing with Billie Jean.
Right.
That the first time I saw it, I was like, what the fuck?
Right.
The boom, 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 to where he makes it a whole nother song.
Right.
And I can imagine that that's the same thing that you felt hearing.
Well, definitely. And speaking of Jeff, so the era you were talking about right now was like about 83-ish.
Okay.
You move up a little bit further to 86, 87.
Yep.
And you have Jeff's Live at Union Square routine. Which if anybody's ever seen me and him play together, they know I make him do that routine. Somehow I trick him into doing that routine every time we play together. That was definitely one of the another early life-changing moment for me. Like hearing him do that with Dance to the Drummer's Beat and Got to Be Real and Apache.
Come on.
It was like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
No, and so probably I've seen it and been on the road. We've been and moved around or whatever, and I've seen Jeff do that.
Right.
And you being you, and other people of your stature, in it that's been amazing in the culture and built it, and everybody is standing there kind of like in awe, like damn, because it was the craziest thing.
Right. Yeah.
Craziest thing.
And it's an honor to be able to call him, just aside from just being a fan, he's like an OG and big brother to me.
Exactly.
Exactly.
What you were just mentioning, and another guest we had previously was Raekwon from Wu-Tang Clan, but he talks about growing up in Staten Island and taking the ferry to Brooklyn or Manhattan and like running into at that time like Big Daddy Kane, the places they're rapping about. He's going to the Albee Square Mall, going to the shows. He's seeing Run DMC, wanting to be Run DMC. You're growing up in New Jersey. I'm from Chicago. So I don't know, like, what's the relationship when you were seeing the like you were talking about 86? Are you seeing this from a distance? Like, how did it feel being in New Jersey?
mean, by nature of how young I was, yes, everything was at a distance. You know, like people will ask, you know, who were your mentors? It was like, well, everybody that I grew up listening to, right? Because it wasn't like I could walk outside my house and get exposed to that. It wasn't until I was maybe 12, 13-ish when my older cousin, the same one that I mentioned earlier, would like take me to New York to go record shopping.
Okay.
Or things like that, you know, when he could, because he had just gotten his first little car. So, yeah, everything was pretty much from a distance, and that started to change, really, I would say, for me. This is fast forwarding a bit, but like when I started going to college.
Okay.
I graduated school early because I got skipped a couple times in grammar school. So I started
Skipped
college.
a couple of grades?
Yeah.
Me too. Second grade.
They sent me from like kindergarten to
I
third.
stayed in second grade for 2 weeks.
Slight flex.
Geniuses. Give me some, Papa.
Yeah, I went from kindergarten to third grade. So
Damn, that's even better than you, bro.
Yeah, better than me? Yeah. 2 weeks. I stayed in second grade 2 weeks. He said, fuck second grade and kept on going.
First grade was not even
He said, fuck
first grade.
Anyway,
forget first grade.
Yeah.
So we, you know, going to, I was going to Rutgers in Newark, but I was still living at home. But the more I started to meet people in college, just to make a very long story short, it started to become more of a reality, right? Mm-hmm. So like, another big changing point for me was a turning point for me. One of my other friends, who's like one of my OGs, Malik, he and a few others used to do a open mic night on Wednesdays called the club was called the Pipeline. Mm-hmm. They would do an open mic where basically MCs could just come and rhyme, and you know, during certain parts of the night, we would just play beats. So he gave me the opportunity to start playing with them at the show. Now, Malik was childhood friends with Tame from the Artifacts. Okay. Rest in peace. So Tame would always come through. And then you'd also have, like, the Outsiders. Redman showed up once or twice. You know, a lot of the local acts that were local to Newark and the surrounding areas. So I remember one night, you know, I would play my beats. Like, I would have people rhyming over records that were out. And then in between people that were showcasing, I would just play my beats as interludes. And one night, Tame got up to rhyme, and I played whatever record was hot at the time. He's like, nah, play the other beat. So I'm thinking he's talking about the last record I played. He's like, nah, the other one. Mm-hmm. And eventually I realized he was asking me to play the beat from my tape. Right.
Nice.
So that happened that night, and then the same thing happened with the Outsiders. And that was kind of like an affirmation because I grew up watching these guys on TV. They're like superheroes, right?
Yep.
But now they're actually becoming humanized a bit, like, and they're interacting with me as a peer. Mm-hmm. So that definitely put a lot of the extra battery in my back to go. Yeah, to really try and pursue this.
Dope.
I do want to take one step back.
Yeah, sure.
I saw another quote of yours where you said you got like an ASR 10 and you thought you just open the box and be RZA.
Instant RZA in a box.
Yeah, instant RZA. I'm curious, like, what were some of the other RZA, or what were some of those earliest producers that made you, like, inspired you to do, or you wanted, you know, a lot of artists start copying someone first before they figure out how to take that to make it their own? I
mean, for me, it was everybody from that era, whether it was RZA, Beat Miners, Primo, Larry Smith, Pumpkin, who did a lot of the earliest hip hop records, you know, but then also like John Williams,
right? Star Wars,
yeah, like, or just his score work in general, whether it was Star Wars, Superman, Indiana Jones, you know, those things were embedded in my DNA just as much as the hip hop that I was listening to, you know, and then also obviously I was obsessed with George Clinton as a kid. Started out because of the artwork. Yeah, the artwork on the Parliament and Funkadelic albums was always crazy.
Amazing.
Right, but then the music, he was creating a whole experience. It wasn't just here's 10 records.
Right.
You might buy an album, it might only be like, here's 6 songs. Each one of them is like 8 minutes long, but you get to immerse yourself in this universe that he created through artwork on his albums as well. So, but yeah, you know, all the legends of the 80s and 90s, I grew up on all of it. Marley, obviously, especially. you know, Howie T, Herbie Lovebug, of course, you know, yeah, it's just literally everything and anything, you know, I took inspiration from.
So keeping with that, like in that vein of the RZA in the box
right.
type thing, like what equipment do you use? Like I know we have some producers in the house now, like
right.
Tahir, we got Thelonious in here, some other ones.
BoatHouse.
Nephew, what up?
BoatHouse, yeah, BoatHouse.
Yeah, nah. So I pretty much do everything in Logic, but I also have a very large vintage synthesizer collection.
Vintage.
Yeah. So like Mini Moogs, Jupiter 8s, you know, the Elka Synthex, the Oberheim 4-voice. Mm-hmm. I get inspired by being able to interact with these machines that were part of the creative process of generations that came before me. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It inspires me in a different way than a modern piece does. Not that there's anything wrong with using modern things. Mm-hmm. The inspiration hits a little bit different when I'm touching something that I know was a part of a record that I love from 40 years ago. You know,
like what's your process, studio process? I know you probably been asked this 100 times, but is it like?
I don't really have a process because the inspiration can always come from somewhere different, right? Mm-hmm. Like the inspiration could hit from a conversation. Mm. It could hit from a sound you hear walking down the street or driving down the street. Inspiration can come from a sample that you've heard, you know, or another song that you've heard that you really appreciate. The inspiration can come from so many different places that there really is no process. Kind of just sit down and say, okay, what are you feeling like today? Mm-hmm. And whatever you're feeling like is where you start. You know, whether it's the drums, whether it's chopping.
So you don't sit down, do like 5 Hail Marys,
no,
the thing over there, and then go drums first.
Nope, it's just whatever it is. A lot of times, I will say this: if it's one of the parts of my process which I didn't realize was weird or abnormal. Mm-hmm. Until Guru pointed it out to me one day in the studio, because I was just sitting there playing the record that I want to sample, and I'm just moving it around to different places. And he's like, "What are you looking for something?" I said, "No, I'm making a beat in my head." So I go and find as I'm listening to the record, I'm remembering what I want to chop, where. Then I just go back and sample each part into the MP when I was using the MP, or sometimes in Logic now. But a lot of the planning all happens up here. So when you hear stories like sometimes you hear me mention I made that beat in 3 minutes or 30 seconds or 5 minutes, whatever. It's the physical work of it
is what it is.
Didn't take me that long because the majority of it happened up here.
That's why you skipped first grade, B. Yeah. That's why you skipped first grade.
He completed first and second in his head.
In his head. Right. It was already done. It was already done.
It's done.
Right.
Got to school, boom, graduate.
But you just mentioned sampling, and that was something that I did want to talk to you about. We were talking a little bit about this earlier, but like how you inherited the record collection first from your cousin. And then, if I'm right, Sean J. Period had an epiphany that sampling violated his religion, and he gave you his record collection.
Yeah, well, he didn't give it to me. We worked something out, but for what I received,
say to be clear,
yeah, like for what I got from him was worth a lot more than what I gave him for it. But yeah, because that was about maybe like 7,000 records.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's like almost a burden. You have to store those.
Yeah, well, luckily I had the space at the time, right? Oh. So like we had this is when I owned Baseline Studios in New York. So the office was just literally lined with records. Like out of the 4 walls, 3 of them were just covered in records going all the way around the room. So we definitely had the space. But I'll tell you this much: like I still to this day have not gone through all of them because I have my own record collection of like about 15,000 records.
Right.
And like I remember like Large Professor, who's also another huge inspiration of mine. Mm-hmm. He would come to the studio sometimes to hang out, and he would just start pulling through the records like, "Yo, you got this? You know you got this?
Yep.
These are the drums from such and such. This is the loop. This is the horns from this."
Yep.
And to this day, I still have not finished going through that collection.
Well, like what I wanted to ask about it. Do you early, the technology makes it now where you can sample digital sounds or just go to YouTube and rip a beat.
Right.
Do you find yourself when you're in a mode of sampling, is it coming from the vinyl? Do you have any preference to like actually grabbing a record to sample or you don't?
It comes from wherever I find it. Whether it's a video link on YouTube, whether I have the record. Some guys are very anal about stuff like that. Like I only sample from the original record. I don't use represses. I don't use reissues, and I don't sample, from digital sources. I'm like, bro, that might be the only place you can get it.
Right.
So I'm not really worried about where it came from. My only concern is what I'm going to do with it when I get my hands on it. To me, there's no rules, there's no standards. It's just, what are we doing that's best for the record? No pun intended.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if this is true either, but I heard like someone made up the name Just Blaze as a joke. And like, can you talk about?
It wasn't a joke. It's just, I didn't have a name, right? Because like when everything happened for me, it happened by surprise and it happened very quickly. That old saying that they say that people don't see the 10,000 hours you put in beforehand.
Right.
They just see the end result. But once the end result kicked in, it happened really quick. And I didn't even have a name. And I was in the studio working on this Mace album.
Damn, which one?
Mace
was huge here. Huge.
So I was working on Mace, and it was my first time out. It was the first thing I'd ever done. So I remember being in the room, and they're like, yo, you got to come up with a name. They're like, what's your name? I'm like, Just. They're like, Just what? I'm like, Just. Just. They're like, Just? I'm like, no, it's just. Because up until that point, I was just always DJ Just growing up, right?
Right.
So somebody came in the room. I think it was my man Super Sam, who was the one who made the connect for me and Mace. And he was like, yo, that beat is just hot. And I'm like, all right. They're like, yo, that should be your name, Just Hot. And I was like, hell no. So then a little while later, coincidentally that same evening, rest in peace, Huddy Combs came in the room. Pardon me. And I'm like, yo, who did this beat? They're like, the kid over there. He didn't even know my name. He was like, yo, that beat is it's just blazing. And I'm like, they're like, that's your name. And I was like, no, it's not.
Right.
But then I never gave them another name. So when the record came out, it just said produced by Just Blaze. So I was going to change it, but then the record went gold.
Why would you change it?
So it's like,
why would you?
I should probably keep the name.
So, funny you say that. Dope story, right? Dope story. Whoever knows about my brand, Fly, Pop, you were the first product placement I had.
Oh, word?
So, Success?
Yeah.
Success. So, Success is from here. I don't know exactly how y'all were connected, but like I know he's I think he's at Atlantic right now. He's at one of the big labels. He supported the brand, was in the sneakers too at the time or whatever, and then so he saw some of my first shirts with the shoes on it. Right. And I think he got it to you. Yep. And you were like, yo, let me get that. I'm like, boom, sent you a whole package. Right. And then you all were doing Fade to Black. Right, yeah, the Fade to Black. So Fade to Black came out, and then when Fade to Black came out and you were on the screen with I think it was the box game. It was one of my first shirts. Right. Or whatever. My next tail or whatever. Just chirping, going through whatever. Right. Chirping crazy like, yo, this is your shirt, this is your shirt. And then we connected and then just been moving. Right. Thank you. Right. So I'm just saying, in front of all of y'all and the world, thank you, Just Blaze. No doubt. You kicked off a lot of. Hey, thank you. That's all love. That's all love. Thank you. So that being me in maybe kicking off my brand in a major way or whatever, like how and what was your first placement that kicked off your joint like that, like for real? That Mace record. Was it the Mace record? It was the Mace record, and then after that, because I didn't really have a plan, so it was quiet for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Really, because I didn't know what to do next. Mm-hmm. And then a friend of mine, Matt, a very good old friend of mine who used to run this was in the era of like Fat Beats, right? Early Fat Beats. Yep. So there was a lot of independent New York hip hop labels, and he owned one called Guess Wild. So he was like, yo, is it true you just did a beat for Mace? And I was like, yeah. He's like, yo, I got a meeting at Penalty Records. This is where Capone Noriega was signed to. That was their main act. Wow. And they had also just signed an act named Half a Mil, who was affiliated with AZ. So Matt takes one of my tapes down to the penalty office. The A&R at the time, his name was Mayhem. He had the Mayhem and Martin Moore show on NYU Radio at the time. That was big. So they picked 2 beats from me from that tape immediately for Half a Mil. Booked a session to come down to the studio next week. Had the check at the session.
which I thought was going to be like the norm. Later on, that was
not the norm.
Definitely not the norm.
Definitely not the norm.
They were just small, independent, and about their business.
Right.
Because they were a small company, it was easy for them to move like that. It wasn't a big process. It was, the
Right.
beat is $5,000. We're buying 2 of them. Here's $2,500 for first half for each one.
Wow.
You know, and yeah, I feel like once the half thing happened, then things started to pick up. You know, that's when I don't even remember how I met Killer Priest. I think it was Don Pooh. Yeah, so me and Priest ended up connecting, and then from there, I would say the next really big break was Pun.
Okay.
There was a group called One Life to Live that was signed to Mark Pitts, who used to be Big E's manager.
Yep.
So he had gotten his label deal with Universal. He signs this group One Life to Live, and he had this one record where he was going to have all of his artists on the record. One of those artists was a guy named Sunkiss. So Kiss, at the session, is telling me, he's like, yo, I'm going to bring some of your beats to Pun. I think he would kill him. And he's like my best friend. I'm like, all right, sure. So you fast forward like 4 months later, One Life to Live, unfortunately, gets dropped from the label. And I get a phone call from Sunkiss like, yo, Pun said he wants that beat. He knows the group got dropped, and he's going to call you in 5 minutes. So I'm like, okay. Phone rings 5 minutes later. Can I speak to Joss? I'm like, yo, this is Pun. Come to my crib. I'm in the BoatHouse. I'm like, all right. Jumped in the car, ran right over there.
Is he like Pun with Fat Joe at this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is going into his second album.
Okay, cool.
So he, we sit, in his living room. I played him a couple beats. He picks like 5 beats. And I'm looking around at his house. He was, if you remember when he passed, or you might know this, might not know this, but like he was living in a hotel at the time because he was redoing his house, right?
Okay.
So when I got to him, he was just about to start that process. So the house was in a bit of disarray, mostly because there was all brand new studio equipment and boxes everywhere. So
in the living room, in the kitchen.
Yeah, everywhere, like hallways, by the front door.
Right.
So his plan was after he finished redoing the house, he was going to build a studio in the house.
Right.
So I start pointing things out to him, like, well, why do you have this and this? Because these 2 things kind of do the same thing. So I'm pointing out a lot of stuff that he bought that he didn't need. And he was like, oh, so Sam Ash fleeced me, basically. I'm like, yeah, like they sold you way more than you needed.
Finessed you.
Right. So I start breaking down to him what he does need, what he doesn't need. He's like, so let me ask you a question. You seem to know a lot about this. When I'm finished with the house, will you come and help me set up the studio? I said, sure, no problem. He said, that's your word? I said, yeah. He said, take whatever you want. So Pun literally built out my first studio.
Damn.
Wow.
Like, and I probably left his crib with about 40 to 50 grand worth of stuff.
Right.
And he never asked, and unfortunately we never got to do the studio bill, but it was never even a thing where he was like, all right, since I gave you all that equipment, I need those beats for free, whatever. He still paid for it. Cause he was coming off of that year where he had like 70 features or something
So
crazy.
he was it.
Right, so he
So Pop, brother. When he said you could have whatever you want, did you just go to the little bitty box? Did you go to I'm just saying. I'm just trying to picture you in there.
Right.
What was the first thing you saw? I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah, no, I got a console, D88s, remotes for the D88s. Like
remotes.
literally set up the majority of my entire setup and being able to record at home. So before that, I just had enough. I had enough to like make beats at home.
Right.
I now have the ability to record an entire record.
You walked out of there with shit under your
I called the car service.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't take the train with this.
I called
can't take the train.
I called the car service and was out of his crib within 8 minutes.
Yes.
Before he changed his mind.
Yes.
That's what's up. That kind of like there's a question I was gonna ask you later, but it kind of leads in. I know it seems like you inherited these various collections. This story you just told about Big Pun. Right. You got you interned first at a cutting room studio, and then the next day, like the dude who was in charge, I think, quit, and you had an opportunity to jump in there.
Yeah, like so I finally gotten an internship through a childhood friend of mine who ended up becoming my partner, and manager, Nasa, and it was supposed to just be like a winter break thing from college, right? So there was maybe like 2 to 3 weeks left in the winter break. So I go to, that's what it was. Intern of hers had called out sick. So I was supposed to just fill in for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Then the following week, that Monday, that intern calls and says, yeah, I just got a record deal. Q-Tip just signed me. I'm not coming back. And she shouldn't have.
That makes sense.
Right.
That
so
makes
they were
sense.
like,
I'm out.
If
right.
Q-Tip hits me tomorrow, Dave, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I'm just kidding.
her
Trying
name,
to figure it out.
her name was Jane Doe.
Okay,
So-
yeah. From she was on Tribe, Wordsworth on that Tribe Called Quest.
She was part of
I
that
love
crew,
movie.
right.
Yeah.
So Jane gets a deal. So I'm supposed to just be there while filling in the gaps until I go back to school. And then the night manager gets fired. I don't know what he did. All I remember is that we showed up at like 10 a.m. or 9:30 that morning, and the police were there escorting him out.
Wow.
So they needed somebody to fill in the night manager slot, and they were like, "You want the job?"
What's up?
So I was like, "Yeah," but then I had to go home and tell my mom, who was an educator all of her life, "Hey, I want to drop out of school to try and do this music thing." You figure the reason I gave her was most people go to college to get a degree and hopefully get a
Great job.
a job that lands them somewhere at the bottom of whatever field they want to be in, right? And many times that doesn't even happen. How many people who have like architecture degrees and like work at Walmart, right? Through life and circumstance. So I had already spoken to a few other family members about this, and I didn't know that they had all went and had a conversation with her already. I had encouraged her to just let it rock. So we're sitting at the dinner table, and she's just ice grilling me the whole time, like stone faced, like, you know how much money I pay for you to go to college every year?
Right.
You think that money comes from nowhere, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, she's just messing with me the whole time. She was already going to say yes.
Right.
But she put me through the ringer a little bit, and then she said, listen, will it make you happy? I said, yes. She said, go ahead, do it.
Nah, that's support, yo.
Yeah. No, that's
real.
The support of my family has been one of the most important constants throughout my career, like from the very beginning.
Oh, shout out to the fans.
Yeah, no, shout out.
Shout out to the fans. Big fan.
My parents were the same way. They just had the philosophy like if you try and fail, that's better than if you never try. You'll just always have that regret.
Right.
But what I wanted to ask you, they say like a popular definition I think of when I think of luck is like when opportunity meets skill. And it seems like I was thinking of your career and wondering like what your definition of luck might be, because it seems like you're in the right place at the right time, but then you've also done all these things to put yourself there. So I'm just curious if you've thought about that at all.
Yeah, no. You know, one of the things I always say is I feel like all of us, whether we realize it or not, usually get one shot at greatness or one shot that can lead to doing something great. One of the problems is people don't always recognize that opportunity when it's presented to them. Two is some people don't know, if they do recognize it, they might not know how to utilize it. Right? I've definitely have led somewhat of a charmed life, but it goes back to what you were saying about always making sure that I placed myself in the environment that could lead to success in the next step.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to get a job at a sports agency, you might have to do time interning at a sports agency, right? Like you're not gonna really find that opportunity to work at a sports agency, you know, once again working in Walmart, right? No disrespect to anybody that works at Walmart.
Right. It's not the same thing. Like I was into sneakers. One of my first jobs was Foot Locker.
Right, exactly. You have to put yourself somewhere in a place that gets you closer to what your goal is.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that I've always made it a point to do from the time that I was very, very, very young. Like by the time I was 12, 13, you know, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I just had to figure out how to get close to it.
How to do it. Yeah. Good.
So I want to, speaking of getting close to it, you get a phone call from G. Roberson.
Right.
He says, I'm putting together a production team for Roc-a-Fella Records.
And I hung up on him.
And you hung up on him, but luckily he called back.
Yes.
Why you hang up on him, Pop?
So some of y'all might remember or know of Bruce Hornsby.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who might not, he sang Some Things Will Never Change, which Tupac sampled for Changing. For Changes, rather. So Bruce was one of our big clients at the cutting room all the time. And he was very much a practical joker, right?
Okay.
So Bruce knew.
Oh, you thought he was playing.
Bruce knew what my aspirations were. So he would call me, just be like, "Hey, this is Joe Blow from Galaxy Records calling for Justin. We want to offer you $1 million record deal." And I'd just be like, "What do you want, Bruce?"
Right.
So this time, G calls. I had just had a meeting at Universal where G had come across some of my music that I had left.
Okay. Yep.
With Dino Duval, who was the guy who discovered and gave Cash Money their deal. So G had an artist by the name of Bathgate who could rhyme but didn't have a demo, so he would just take him to meetings with A&Rs and have him rhyme.
Let it rhyme.
So Dino was like, "I want to hear you on a beat." So it just so happens to put in my CD because we had just happened to have a meeting not long before. So G tracks me down, calls the studio and says, "Hey, this is G Roberson from Roc-a-Fella Records. Trying to put together a production team, blah, blah, blah. Did you make a beat that goes like this?" And he starts singing it into the phone. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, "How soon can you come down to the Roc-a-Fella office?" And I was like, "I got to go ask my boss." So I go to Dave, and I'm like, "Yo, Dave, I just got a call from Roc-a-Fella Records, blah, blah, blah. Their offices, I think at the time, were on 15th Street, so not too far away." He's like, "So what are you saying?" I'm like, "I got to go to this meeting." He's like, "You just came back from lunch." I'm like, "Dude, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. This is Jay-Z." He's like, "Who's Jay-Z?"
Wow.
And he's just giving me a hard time.
Right.
So eventually he's like, "Yo, go ahead. Go do what you got to do." So in that meeting, they were like, "Yes, we want to start a production team. We want to do you, Rock Wilder, this other dude, K-Rob, Buck Wild, and this new kid we just found named Kanye West." So I was like, all right. So the production team thing never really actually happened.
As a team, as a unit.
Yeah, as a unit. Like,
As a
it
unit.
didn't become the hitmen of Roc-a-Fella, the way Puff had his crew. But, it was just me and Ye. Now, Rock Wilder was still family. Buck Wilder was still family. They still contributed, just not in the same way, right.
Gotcha. Now, just with the whole Roc-a-Fella thing, like, Pop, like, just speak on that for a second, just because, as we all know, like, that Roc-a-Fella, that era of those beats, like, hit after hit after hit, Jay shit, Bean shit, and all of that, like how what was going on over there, yo? You was back in first grade, obviously, because you was putting them out, like, going crazy. You know
what it was? It's one of the things that I always say is you don't know that you're making history when you're in the process.
When you're in the process,
of making it, you're just kind of doing it.
Right.
You're doing the task that's in front of you, and then you wake up one day and it's 20 years later. We actually just celebrated the 20-year anniversary of a Freeways album this past Saturday in Philly, sold out show. It was amazing.
Love. No, we just celebrated the 20 years of Fly.
Right. Wow.
When you came to do the block party with Tim and all, that was the beginning.
That was the beginning, right.
I was actually on that bill too. Right. That was like
Roosevelt
my first thing.
Treasure chest.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like, we really didn't. You know that the records that you're making are killing on the radio, they're killing in the clubs, they're killing on the charts, but you don't really have the chance to stop, or I didn't really have the chance to ever stop and reflect on that in that time, because for me it was just nonstop work. Right. Mm-hmm. So, like, especially with the way Baseline was set up, we had 2 rooms, but we had a roster of so many artists. So what would happen is, like, Bleak was the early bird. He'd show up at 10, be gone by 3. Around 1:32ish, Hove is showing up. By like 8 p.m., Dipset is filtering through when they came around. Beans would call you at midnight and say, "I'm on my way," but show up at 4 in the morning. Sleep for 3 hours and get up and want to record at 7 in the morning, but had the beat blasting on 10 the entire time
the
he was
whole
sleeping,
time.
like right in his sleep. And it was just that schedule for years.
Right.
So it was really like a well-tuned, factory.
So you ain't never been in the club, sitting there, and just hear your shit come on back to back to back to back, and be like, damn.
In that era, not so much.
Okay.
Because I was rarely in the clubs unless we were going to, like, you realize we were putting out 3-4 albums a year, right? So it's like we're going to the club for the release party.
So you working.
Right. I do remember, though, 2001. Yeah, it had to be 2001 because it was right before September 11th. we were living in Miami at the time, and by we I mean like it was me, Guru, and at the time just Beans. And what was happening was little by little, Beans was assembling state property. So as one of them would come home from being right, he would fly them down. But the purpose of us being in Miami was to do a Beans and Bleak album. Bleak's brother had just had a really bad motorcycle accident and had to go through a lot of therapy and rehab and whatnot. So the accident happened in Miami. He was getting treatment in Miami, so it made sense for us to just go down there so Bleak could still focus on family.
Right.
So we're living down there. The Beans and Bleak album isn't really coming together the way it should because of what Bleak was dealing with family-wise. But at the same time, these state property guys are showing up. So I remember we were in Club Level, I think it was Club Level at the time. And LS1, who was DMX's DJ, was playing. So the H to the Izzo single had maybe come out the day before, and the B-side was You Don't Know. So LS hits You Don't Know, and the entire club knew like the first two verses already. Yeah. But the record had just come out the day before.
Yeah.
So that was a wild moment because it was like, yo, I think we might be onto something.
Yeah.
Man. Like for that record that had just been released not even 24 hours before and it's already ringing off in the club, that's not in New York. This is in Miami.
Right.
That was definitely a sign that we had something special.
See, that's crazy because as you're saying that, I wasn't even thinking about it like that, but then you just really went into like, yeah, this is before IG.
Right. This is before any of
that. And you say it came out 24 hours before. Mm-hmm. Wow.
So I don't know if Miami radio had been running it like that crazy or what, but by the time it came on in the club that following night, the whole club knew.
Somebody popular heard it on the radio.
Yeah.
Tape that bad boy.
Right.
It was slinging you don't knows.
But yeah, that was special. And you know, it's looking back at it though, it's just amazing. Removing myself from it, that we were able to, because not just me, it was all of us. Mm-hmm. Everything at Roc-a-Fella was very much a group effort. Like songs that I didn't produce, I'm still helping mix.
Right.
You know, I didn't do every beat on Freeway's album. I'm still helping him pick beats.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like in Sequence's album.
Right.
You know, everybody had input on everything. So
energy was
right.
definitely there.
Right. So it's kind of wild that we were able. I actually had a conversation with Hove about this a couple weeks back, where it was like, it's amazing the amount of output that we were able to put out at a high level with that amount of frequency.
Yeah,
you know, during that time period.
I have three questions kind of related to Jay-Z.
Sure.
You can choose but how you just said you were like, okay, you heard the You Don't Know, you thought, okay, we're onto something. I know your background is also in computers, and it seems from what you've been saying, like you kind of approaching records, computers, putting things together, building stuff, puzzle pieces.
Right.
When you started to get in the flow at Roc-a-Fella, like working with someone like Jay-Z, did you start to feel like it was like playing a video game? Like you started to understand? Were you seeing it like that?
I don't know if I was exactly seeing it like that, but what I will say about the experience with Jay, that was the first time I think that I ever really became or stepped into the role of being a producer. You know, before that, it's like you don't necessarily have the confidence yet. You're younger, so you make a beat. Yeah. And there's this artist that the label links you with, and they're bigging him up like this, or her up like the second coming of Christ, and then they get in the booth and they're trash.
Right.
But what do you really do or say to that?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's kind of just like, kind of got to let it rock. You know, sometimes you had good surprises, sometimes you had bad ones. And because of that, I would be necessarily scared to try to produce the artist or really make a lot of changes with the record. You know, certain artists I had a bit more comfortable with, like me and Priest are friends, right? So I was able to take a little bit more creative liberty there. But, like, I remember when we were doing Soon You'll Understand from the Dynasty album, I had he recorded to a very basic demo version of the record, which was basically just a loop, the drums, maybe a piano, you know?
Yep.
And then that night, after he vocaled it, I went back and really arranged it and, like, made it into what we know now. So he comes in the room the next day, and I'm like, I want to play you something, and I play it for him. You know, Jay's very nonchalant, right? Like, so he's just like, I play it for him, and he's just like, all right, cool. He goes to walk out. And I'm like, wait, so that's it? He's like, yeah, I mean, you produced the record. I pay you to produce.
Yeah.
Not just make beats.
Yep.
Right.
You know, you're good.
Yeah,
and walk out the room. But that kind of gave me the battery in my back to say, okay,
I'm a producer.
Put the producer hat on now.
Okay. Second question of 3 about Jay-Z. And then Dave, go back. Okay. You're working on the Black album. This is billed as the retirement album. I'm just a fan at this time, and we all know, like, as a fan, this is the whole concept. Did you believe that this would actually be the last album, or you're like, no, come on, man, this is not your last album. We'll roll with it for marketing.
Really, no. Like, to put it this way, there was no discussion of a comeback album while we were doing those records. And for all intents and purposes, I mean, he was moving into the position as the president of Def Jam.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
so it was possible,
right? Like, I own Baseline now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, so all these changes are happening surrounding this pending retirement. So at the time, yeah, it felt like it was likely going to be a real thing. Until it wasn't.
Right. Until it wasn't.
Right. But
Kingdom Come.
Yeah, until Kingdom Come happened. But yeah, that was really, we figured that's, you know, like, are you taking a new job? You're moving people out of Roc-a-Fella into these other corporate positions, other larger positions. You figure he's setting up for that transition.
Okay. On the Black album, he says, if lyrics so, truth be told, I'd probably be lyrically Talib Kweli.
Right.
And when he said that, and that came out again just at my place in life as a fan, during that era, you had a group, you had this rift, whether it was fan-driven or actual, with like a raucous and then a bad boy. And these were thought of to be like, you either, like you said, the fat beats, you're either rocking with the fat beats or you're over here. As a producer who's worked with both of these artists, and you just mentioned Tame, and you know, was that underground mainstream thing in New York a real thing, or was it just something a fan, like, did you ever get hate from backpackers?
I feel like it was, you can go back further. If I'm not mistaken, Stakes is High, and what was the Nas album that dropped on the same day? I forget what Nas album it was, but Stakes is High and the new Nas came out the same day. And I feel like that was the first time you saw a clear divide amongst the classes in the hip-hop and who was supporting what and who was into what. Me growing up, it was never like that. It was always just whatever is dope is whatever's dope.
Whatever's dope, yeah.
But then you started to see these lines happen, or these divisive lines occurring amongst, like, fans, and it's almost like two, no pun intended, two tribes were forming.
Yeah, like you either liked Tribe or you were like, it was like you had to hide. Like I remember as a DJ like I remember buying, I was in Bloomington going to college and bought Ludacris's album, and I had to like hide that I had liked the Ludacris album.
And it was just kind of silly when you yes, it's silly when you look back, right? But yeah, I feel like that line shocked a lot of people because it was like arguably the biggest rapper in the world in that moment acknowledging the underground, right? Yeah. But the truth of the matter is we all of us listen to all of that. Right. You know what I mean? So I think it was shocking for a lot of fans to realize that the artists themselves didn't exist in the bubbles that they thought they were in. That they thought they did.
But even you, Pop, as a producer, right?
Right.
And then if it's that same divide of like that boom bap or this different type of hop, then how is it that people even looked at you when you did R&B, or how do you go? How does one go from all of the things you've done, a clips banker, and Usher,
I mean,
you know what I'm saying,
like Madonna,
right.
For me, it's just, again, I grew up on everything, right?
Gotcha.
So it's just all about expressing creativity and art. You know, my background as a DJ obviously helps. You know,
so you're new to records, or
it's just the vibe of it. Yeah, it's one of those things where part of a good DJ set is when a DJ takes you on that journey, right?
Right.
Like it's not just up the entire time. Right. It's not down to it goes like this.
Right.
But through DJing, you learn how to control crowds, take people on a ride with you. So for me, it's just creating moments or creating music for those different moments. One of the things that I always say is, when I sit with artists sometimes, we're trying to build something. One of the things, not that I always say, but I always try to envision in my head is, during what part of your show is this record going to be performed, right?
Dope.
Is this your show opener?
Right.
Is this that moment where all the lights go black,
Right.
and the audience doesn't know what's about to happen, and then there's a big explosion of music? Is this your encore record where you come back onto the stage at the end of the show? You know, is this where you bring out your surprise guest unexpectedly and everybody goes crazy? So I think for me, thinking about things along those lines allows me to inform the kind of musical decisions that I'm going to make when I'm creating the records.
That's
as
awesome.
Well.
No, that's dope.
That's dope.
That's that
That's
first grade.
That's dope.
That first grade mind working there.
I was talking to BoatHouse before this, and he was like, I wonder if he does a lot of intro tracks. Is that a different mind state than when he, like, it's interesting to hear you say, like, you're thinking about where this might go.
Right, like where it might fall in an album, where it might fall during a performance or a concert, definitely. Those are all things that I think about.
Wow. You recently posted on IG, you went through storage, you found a whole bunch of unreleased songs, put them out. I'm just curious if, like, when you were looking through that, any make you shed a tear, like, damn, this is the one I really want out there.
You know, I feel like music finds its way to where it's supposed to be when it's supposed to get there, right? Like, and that just ties into even, like, you might have created a song or wrote a song or produced a beat for one particular artist, but then it ends up going to somebody else. And while it might have been disappointing that the first artist didn't take it or it didn't happen or whatever,
right?
But then the artist that ended up taking it ended up creating an anthem with it. Like the Usher record that you just mentioned, that was originally meant for Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre?
Damn.
Yes, because you remember at the end of, when he announced Detox the first time, he was saying, this is going to be my last album. After this, I'm retiring. So that's why the sample was singing, "You're gonna want me back," like as if he was gonna want to come back to music.
Wow.
So we had a whole song to it. He ended up shelving that version of the album, and then I went in with Usher, and we had tried like 4 or 5 different ideas, and he wasn't feeling none of them. Like I remember it was JD. You know, Jermaine Dupri, Mark Pitts, they were all heavily involved with this album. And they just didn't love any of the ideas for him. And then they came back and they were like, yo, he wants something like not super overproduced, doesn't have to be a dance record. He wants a Just Plays hip hop record. And I was like, bling.
Yep.
There you go.
That's one of my favorite records right there.
Thank
that and that Clips record.
Speaking of music coming out at the right time, or it gets there, like, how frustrating was it to work with Jay Electronica in the?
It's not frustrating at all. I mean, it's
Great
just,
question.
Like the what are you waiting on? Were those discussions?
Listen, Jay's thing from the very beginning has always been, my train is running on schedule. That's been his motto for almost as long as I've known him. I think for the first 2 years that I knew Jay, we didn't record any records. We would just talk. You know, like. Remember back in the days of before it was iChat, what was it AIM Instant Messenger?
Yep.
He stole my Instant Messenger name from somebody else's list, and that's how we ended up talking.
Wow.
People have been mentioned, like Rashad Smith, you know, Tumbling Dice had mentioned him to me, like, yo, I got this kid you might want to mess with, and I want to say maybe Erica had reached out too. But one of them too, he stole my screen name from their computer and just started hitting me. So yeah, for like the first very long while, we would talk about music. We never actually made any. Right? And then it could be a little frustrating sometimes, but you would see that the momentum is there, but you can't rush, you know, right? I mean, I think part of what has made him such impactful is the fact that he pops up when he feels like it.
Right.
Will drop the most amazing verse and it might disappear for you.
Right. Run it down. Cash Money or Roc-a-Fella?
You're asking me?
Cash Money or
Bro,
Roc-a-Fella?
he's got the chain, the hat.
You got to still say it.
I heard that like never comes off. It's glued on.
Glued on. Right. It's there. Ralph Lauren or Gucci?
Ralph.
Okay. Puma or Adidas?
Adidas.
Come on.
Yeah, no, I would say Adidas overall, because Puma is like 2 or 3 specific styles that I like. Right, it was like the Clyde and what else?
The Clyde.
Yeah.
the suede.
Right, yeah, like it's that one specific silhouette pretty much. You know, Adidas has definitely informed much more of my footwear choices than Puma has. All respect due to Puma.
Autobot or Decepticon?
I got the Decept on my arm right
just
here.
have to ask. You guys have to ask.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You know a friend of mine that I grew up with, Knowledge, from Kids
Right,
in the
of
Hall.
course.
And we were talking a little bit about the blog era. And I remember when that first started out, there was a division of artists that fully like shunned it and were against all the young artists. And then there was another group of artists that were veterans that like welcomed the blog technology, welcomed blog artists. I'm curious, you being like a very established, also along the lines of Napster, you're selling a lot of records. These new technologies are coming out. What were your feelings during this changing time? Were you embracing this?
Yeah,
or
I was cool with a lot of the bloggers. You know, like you had Nare.
Yep.
You had Miss Info. You had Two Dope Boys.
Yep.
Yeah, I was cool with all those dudes. You know, like they always were super supportive of. What was the other one? It's The Real. Jeff and Eric.
Fake Short Drive.
Right.
Ruby Hornet.
Yep.
True story.
You know, I was pretty much cool with all of them. You know, they would always support stuff that I did. You know, and I never asked for it once. You know what I mean? So, and also a lot of the artists that they were supporting at the time, I was friendly with as well. And then also, technology is gonna happen, right?
Yep.
You can't really stop that tidal wave from hitting. You know, so it's either you go with the flow of things or you're the dude sitting there trying to stop something that's not going to be able to be stopped. You know, so it just didn't make any sense. And also people have to recognize that for a while, like those blogs were kind of like the streaming playlists.
Yep.
You know, and the way records get broken and dictated now, like
Yep.
For a period, those blogs were the new A&Rs.
Yep.
You know, the new program directors, the new playlists.
Open platform.
Right.
Boom.
Or the before we had the idea of like a playlist director.
Right.
A lot of times it was these blogs that were breaking these records and these artists.
Before we let you get out of here, going back to what you said about Star Wars, and you were looking at the Star Wars score, and you see like Darth Vader, and then you hear this also music, and you start to think, okay, I want to do this.
Right.
As a child, you don't know anything about the business. You have a magic, I want to do this. I'm just curious now, as a veteran, you've been in the music business. You're also creative as a producer. Do you still have any of that like childlike magic? What makes you even decide like, yeah, I'll come to Chicago and do a Legend Conversation and DJ for 100 people?
I never stopped loving what I do. Right. I mean, you gotta, you know, for somebody like me, I would be doing this if I never made any money doing it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I didn't come into this doing it for the money. I didn't even realize that I could make a lot of money doing this when I was very young, right?
Right.
I just wanted to create sounds and make music and try to, you know, make songs and just create things. So, like, from the time I was in, like, 6th grade on, none of my Christmas presents were toys anymore. It was, you know, something music related, whether it was a DJ mixer, turntables, samplers, keyboards, whatever. You know, so while there's a lot of other things that I probably have the aptitude to do, I wouldn't know at this point what else I could do, right? Because this is all I've ever known, or all I've known for so long.
Yeah.
So whether it's creating music, talking with the homies about music, getting the opportunity to sometimes play some music, you know, I still love it the same way I did when I was younger.
Same way.
Man, I want to thank you for sharing your passion for music
Yep.
with us tonight, making the trip out here to Chicago, and come sit in the room with us and tell some stories, man. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all for having me, man.
You guys give it up for
Yeah,
Just
give it up for
Blaze, y'all.
Just Blaze.
Just Blaze.